studio with me today is one of my favorite priests and one of the favorite guests on our show, actually. Whenever he comes on, Father Brian Eckrich, the views go up. It's beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Welcome, Father Eckrich.
It is so good to be here today.
Yeah. So you are the parochial administrator at St. Joseph the Workman in Huntemer and St. Rose of Lima in Garretson. And just recently, also the, how do you say it? The chaplain.
Chaplain for the state penitentiary.
Yeah. So. Yes. So that's a whole new thing for you.
Yeah, that's a whole new ball game. But
yeah.
It's exciting. Okay? It's going okay. 2 weeks in, but.
Okay, good. We'll have you, the next time we have you back, after it's been like a year or so when you're in that, we'll ask again.
That would be a fun interview.
Yeah. All right. So we wanted you to come back in because we have a young woman in a diocese close to us in the Bismarck Diocese who is an investigation into her life has been opened in that diocese to see if we, how do they say it? To see if we can open a cause for sainthood.
Yep,
Is that how it works?
Cause for canonization.
Yes. So that is Michelle Duppong.
Yes.
And Father Eckrich knew her pretty well. And she was one of the inspirations for you becoming a priest?
Yes.
Is that a way to say it?
Yep.
Okay. So we wanted to bring him in. He's been itching to tell us about what he knows of her, the story, and he's been waiting until kind of things have come to fruition as far as her investigation into her life. So, Father Eckrich, will you start? Just tell us a little bit about Michelle's, her life and family that you know.
Okay. So Michelle actually she was born in Colorado.
Oh, that's right.
In 1984, and then shortly after she was born, her parents got the opportunity to begin farming about 45 minutes west of Bismarck. I would say in the town of Haymarsh. Haymarsh is not much of a town.
I was going to say, it must be small.
It's very, very small. It comprises now of a few households and St. Clement's Catholic Church.
Oh.
So that's where she grew up, in this rural countryside. Pretty much just a simple farm girl. Mm-hmm. I know that she loved being on the farm, helping out in the farm and the gardens. They had, I think later on, they started growing a vineyard.
Oh, wow.
And then after, I forget, she would have been 2002. I guess she would have graduated high school and went off to North Dakota State University, where she got her degree in horticulture, kind of continuing that desire to pursue agriculture. And it was there at the NDSU Newman Center, I know that she got involved as a student herself into Focus, the Fellowship of Catholic University students. And that's where that program influenced her life in a way then that when she graduated, she decided to become a Focus missionary. And so I believe it would have been fall of 2006 where she spent 1 year as a Focus missionary at University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Okay.
And then 2 years at South Dakota State, 2 more years at University of South Dakota, and then 1 year last year at the University of Mary. And then after that...
University of Mary is in Bismarck, right? Okay.
Yep. And then she made some connections up there, and then she actually got hired on with the Diocese of Bismarck to be the director of adult formation, education, evangelization. I forget what the exact title was, but so that's what she ultimately, I guess, through all that, I mean, just had a real love for introducing people to encounter Christ.
Right.
And she did a fantastic job at that.
Yeah, obviously. I did read a little bit about her, and it does seem like that rural upbringing and the farm life was really important to her, really kind of formed her. She came from a real strong Catholic family, the way I understand it.
Yep. I forgot to mention she comes from her parents, Ken and Marianne, and then there's 6 kids in the family. Wow. Yep. And five girls and one boy.
Was she like in the middle, if I remember right?
She's somewhere in the middle.
Okay. So she has lots of brothers and sisters. Well, one brother, lots of sisters.
Yeah.
That poor boy. Okay, good. So she grew up like many of us did.
Yeah.
And I really loved how you said they got the opportunity to move to North Dakota. Some people would see that as a bad thing, but it really is for them and for many. Moving to that rural area is a huge opportunity and a blessing for their lives. So I like how you said that. That was great. I noticed it right away from a girl who grew up on a farm. So, okay. So will you tell us, how did you meet Michelle?
Okay. So I was a student at South Dakota State, and it would have been my sophomore year, fall of 2006. Focus showed up for the first time at the SDSU campus.
That was their first time there, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
They just set up shop, and Michelle was on the original team of 4 missionaries. And so I have to admit that I did not have in Focus. It's, the guys work with the male missionaries and the girls work with the girl missionaries. So I was never in discipleship with Michelle, but obviously spending time at that Newman Center, you simply see people. And I got to admit, it's kind of silly that I remember my first encounter with her. She's a very joyful person, just authentically happy. And I remember seeing that as somewhat of a more cynical personality, thinking, people really aren't that happy. She's got to be faking it. There's something. I remember I'm going to actually want to spend more time with her because I want to catch her off guard.
I can totally see you thinking that too.
And then as I kind of just doing ordinary things, just hanging out, seeing her at various events, seeing her at mass, it's like, no, this woman, this is authentic. This is real. And then this growing desire, to ask the question, well, why is she so happy? What does she have that I don't, or that I could have?
Right. Can I ask you a question right there?
Yeah.
I think when people say she was very joyful and happy, can you describe what that looked like with her? I'm asking you a question that I didn't prepare you for. But what was she doing in her life that made you say she's really joyful and happy? Some people know what that looks like in real life.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is simply appreciating the moment.
Okay.
Encountering in an authentic way those people around her.
Okay.
That when she would speak with you, whether it be a serious conversation or something silly, it's like she really cared about you in that moment. It wasn't just a nameless face, I'm doing my job here and I'm trying to get as many people at this event. It's just she had that desire in the moment to be with you.
Okay.
And that's what I guess maybe where I saw her. And she was I guess her happiness came, I think, in encountering the individual in that moment.
So not a complainer, obviously.
No.
Just always happy.
Yeah.
And people saw it. It wasn't, you figured out it wasn't fake.
Yeah. Very quickly.
Good. Okay. So continue. Now that I interrupted you.
Now, what was the original question?
Well, we were talking about how you met her.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And how she impacted your life.
So I guess after those original first encounters, what defines her, I think, at least for me, is invitation. That she, as I said, she authentically cared about you as a person, cared about me. And so she would invite me to all sorts of things. Simple things sometimes, hey, we're going to go to lunch. A group of us are going to lunch at the student union. Would you like to come? And oftentimes, regrettably, I would say, no, I'm busy. That's always kind of my initial response. And then sometimes, but then it was bigger things hey, would you like to go to the Focus National Conference in Orlando? Would you like to go on the student leadership retreat was it January down at Broomtree? And then a lot of times I would say no, I really don't want to. Do you want to go up to the family farm? No, why would I want to do that? But then her persistence, where it was almost kind of obnoxious, where she wouldn't,
in a good way,
in the best of ways, where she wouldn't accept no. I might say no, and she'd be like, okay, that's fine. We'll just think about it and pray about it. And she wouldn't tell me. Then maybe a couple days later, a week later, she's like, so are you going to come along? Did you think about it? What?
She didn't give up on people.
No, that's maybe one of the things that's once she kind of set her sights on a person, it's she didn't give up on you. And that's maybe why she was this persistence. Eventually then you're okay, yep, I will make a trip up to your family farm. Okay, I will finally attend the spring break mission trip to the Bronx in New York, And it was then those moments then, an Eagle Eye retreat up in Fargo, at that seminary at the time, those were then the moments that opened up for me kind of this growth of faith to encounter something more, to encounter Christ in a deeper way. So I guess it was through that way that Michelle had that impact on my life, where she encouraged me, invited me into those kind of foundational experiences I had in my life to say, okay, I would like to take my faith more seriously.
Right.
And she was always there at those events too, just, constantly drawing me closer to Christ, because she's always, it's like the other thing too, like with her, you could really know that she in a personal way knows Jesus Christ through the simplicity of her prayer, whatever that was, and the privacy of her own heart. But she'd invite you ultimately to events, but what she was ultimately inviting me to, was an encounter with Christ. And through many ways, big and small, I guess she brought me there.
Yeah.
So
did you, did she speak about her faith very often? I mean, I know as a focus missionary, I guess, okay, when I was in college, I never had a focus missionary come because they weren't on campus yet. That was a long time ago. Do they just invite you to things and kind of let you take that path yourself? Did she speak about her faith? Was it very obvious to you besides the fact that she was inviting you to things? I mean, can you describe some of that?
I guess I think some of the places where I had conversations were in the moment, like when we were on the spring break trip to the community of St. John, which is out by Illinois. Like, we got to take a long car ride, and I think I was in the vehicle with her, and it's just those kind of conversations where she just shares aspects of it. It's strange. It's almost like just a regular conversation about, talking about like, hey, what do you think about that homily today that, when we went to daily mass, or, what on the way back, what did you think about, what was your favorite, best experiences about this retreat, the community of St. John's, just kind of those moments of sharing and open. And I guess that's where I got to, maybe more just
But that makes sense, because what you're describing is that, like, she made those things about religion and faith into like everyday things.
Yes. And that's maybe why I have a difficulty explaining stuff now, because it's like, were there explicit moments? Yes, but they were so, I'd say, just simple, not mundane, but it's like she just could weave it into ordinary conversation where it wasn't awkward. It's just, let's talk about this, kind of like, so.
So for you, did she then, was it obvious to you in the moments when you were deciding to become a priest that this was partly, at least, Michelle's doing? Or is this like a look back 10 years later? Oh, hey.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a look back, because in the moment, like I said, all these things are small, seemingly insignificant, but it's over time then you kind of put the puzzle pieces together and say, okay, well, it was this Eagle Eye retreat where I first encountered, the community of St. John. I encountered my first ever encounter with the thought of St. Thomas Aquinas, and how that shaped me, and all these things. And then it's like, okay, well, and I don't ever remember Michelle like saying like, hey, Brian, I think you should be a priest. Think about it. Maybe she had some inclination of that, or maybe like she saw something in me, but it was this just gradual progression where, so yeah, in the moment of all these things, it's what I had no idea where it was going to lead. How tricky she was being, right? She's tricky.
She's tricky. I think that's how we actually encourage, I think, young men to think about priesthood, is to talk about those things. And actually, even if she didn't ask you directly, hey, have you ever thought about being a priest? But to ask that question of young men.
And that's really the way of discipleship. That's the way Christ did it. He just said, hey, you guys fishing, come follow me.
Right.
He didn't like say, oh, by the way, you're going to be one of the 12 apostles to
Right.
establish the universal church for the salvation of all mankind.
They probably would have been like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
That sounds like I can't do that.
So they didn't see it was coming, and neither did I.
Right. That's a good way to put it. If you just joined us, we're talking to Father Brian Eckrich about his experiences with Michelle Duppong, who is, her life is being investigated to be accepted, her cause accepted to be looked into as a saint. So we don't have very much time left, and I knew this was going to happen because it's quite a story. I don't want to miss anything, but she was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
When was that?
I believe it was December 29th of 2014.
Right. Okay. So you were still in touch with her, friends with her at the time?
Yep. I guess at that time, like being caught up in the life of seminary, and that whole summer I was down in Omaha for IPF, Institute of Priestly Formation. So, I guess, yeah, I kind of distantly have remained in touch, but ultimately, I guess, even not so much with her, but like the rest of her family.
Okay, sure. How did that diagnosis change her faith? Or did it?
Oh, it did.
Did it?
I believe that moment of her life was not an interruption to her mission of evangelization, but it became the principal moment, I believe, of sanctification.
Oh, wow.
To enter into, suffering. That suffering has a purpose to purify one's soul. And I think for her, the initial shock of saying this diagnosis, but then slowly being stripped of everything. I know she had a boyfriend. I think she was serious about getting married and having a family, and I believe perhaps taking over the family farm and just having children. And even then being told, like, with her diagnosis, like, you won't ever have children.
Oh, even if she survived the cancer?
Yeah, because they had to remove a whole bunch of stuff that, yeah.
Would have been necessary.
Yeah. And then from there, just as the things progressed or declined, her health just becoming worse and worse. And towards the end then just being in pain, like having tubes come out of your rib cage and not being able, because it was intestinal cancer. So they had to remove a chunk of her intestines, not even like being able to eat or drink water. Towards the end, that's, I think, a great deal of suffering.
Yeah.
And I think it's in those moments of being stripped of everything that as Saint John the Baptist says, he must increase, I must decrease. And I think is that proportion as she lost control of everything, she opened that door then in a more radical way to invite Jesus Christ.
Right.
To guide her.
And
because that's all she had.
Right. And honestly, suffering a lot of times is the thing that really solidifies a saint, I think.
Yeah. And then also I must add her desire to offer up that suffering for the conversion of others. That she saw the value of it. And so I know in speaking with the family, she'd say, like, I pray for the conversion of so-and-so, or we need to pray for, but that's what she would use her suffering for.
Right. That's the best way to deal with suffering, is try to use it for others.
Yeah.
I want to try to get 2 questions in quick before we run out of time. Was there any thought in your mind before her death that she could be a saint? Or was it after?
Well, it was after.
Okay.
And I think it was the first thoughts, maybe like, I'm not quite sure when. I know this was a question I was supposed to prepare, but
that's okay.
You always kind of think it's like, well, this is a possibility. She was a good and holy person. And even the family I know as I spend time with them, they've said there's people that have inquired about it and just kind of like, oh, well, that would be nice someday. Yeah. But I hate to admit, it's like you kind of never actually seriously think, well, it's actually going to happen.
Right.
And so when it did, what was it, last month, was it June 12th, when that announcement was made, it's just like,
here it is.
I'm just like speechless. It's like a total surprise.
Right.
and even speaking of the family, they weren't even certain that
That was my other question for you, was what does the family think of this?
Yeah. It's, like I said, it's a total surprise. Like, even they didn't exactly know that this was going to happen.
Right.
So when they got that call, it's just like, wow. And I think for them now, it's this reality of balancing the farm life with now this possibility of maybe as time goes on, it's like they're going to take on a more public role.
Very true.
To do. I mean, they're the family. They know much more about her than I can ever admit to knowing. And so perhaps interviews, and that'll all be maybe perhaps part of life. And it's just like, and I guess they're not quite sure what that will look like.
Right.
None of us are. This is canonization. It's not something that happens often.
Right.
But,
this is all new for all of us. All of us. Yeah. I have a feeling there's a lot more to this story. After we're done here recording, I'm going to talk to Father Eckrich and see if we need to do a little overtime and talk about more. All right, welcome back. We decided to keep Father Eckrich here a little longer because we felt like there was more to say about Michelle Duppong. So he agreed. He got more coffee. Now he's back. He's got coffee, and we're going to chat a little bit more about his experiences with Michelle. So, you had mentioned a trip you took to the Bronx, and I have a feeling there's more behind this story. So will you tell us about that?
Okay.
Trip?
So I believe the trip happened, it would have been spring break of 2009.
Okay.
So I think I would have been a junior. Yes, that was Michelle's second year at SDSU.
Okay.
And she, of course, was the one that invited me to that.
Of course.
And she was actually leading that trip with 2 other focus missionaries.
Okay.
And so that was one of those more memorable things where she said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I'm like, "New York City? Absolutely not. No."
Had you ever been in New York City?
No, and I had absolutely no desire to actually go there. But I did.
You did?
And so eventually, after some weeks, I'm like, okay, I'll do this. And so there was 17 of us, not all from SDSU, but a decent group from SDSU, that we went on this wild adventure of the unknown. And so it was a week of working with the Missionaries of Charity and the Sisters of Life and the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. And I guess what sticks in my mind and maybe what kind of demonstrates something about Michelle is I say loosely that she was leading this trip because ultimately, like, what's a girl from North Dakota? Like, she doesn't know how to navigate New York City.
Right.
We kind of organize these things, but it's this exercise in kind of a missionary spirit where you think, okay, we have no idea what we're doing. But these beautiful moments where I remember the very first night we were there, we woke up in Sioux City, Iowa to fly out at 3 a.m. And then I think we got to New York later that afternoon, like, 3 or 4 or 5.
Because, of course, there's going to be a layover somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then immediately we went to this thing called Catholic Underground with the CFRs, and there was this awesome concert with a band called L'Angelus. Best concert ever. Maybe because I was just sleep deprived. But then, like, trying to get back, and we had no idea how the subway system worked.
Oh.
And we waited, and it was like, we didn't know that the number 5 line didn't run after 10 p.m. And so we're just hanging out. And I'm like, for me, like, I am just nervous. And I'm guessing, like, Michelle was too. But it's always this kind of, like, optimistic spirit. It's like, I'm thinking I'm going to get mugged or murdered. I don't know.
You are in New York, after all.
But it's like with Michelle, she's like, oh, it's, we'll figure it out. It's going to be okay. This kind of like, and even that wasn't like a false optimism. She's just like, well, how about let's pray about this. Let's see what maybe, and what's beautiful about this is like, and I'm almost kind of saying, like, mocking her, like, let's pray about this. God will help, but the Blessed Mother will come to our aid. Well, I think we maybe just said some basic prayers, and well, then there was a couple or a group of people. They're like, in the subway, we've been waiting there for an hour, and they're like, oh yeah, didn't we saw you at Catholic Underground. We live here, and you guys know that you guys look like you have no idea what you're doing. And so, like, in this moment, there was people we'll never know who they are, like came to our aid, and they're like, well, okay, this isn't going to work, but you can follow us, and well, it'll take you this other place, and then you can get a cab to go back. But I know it's only day one, but it's, just that kind of thing where it's just like that trust that she had in the Lord, when I certainly didn't have any trust in. And just how that played out then, at least in that first moment of an experience in New York.
And did you recognize that right then, that, hey, we just prayed about this stuff, and help came?
Yeah, that was kind of like, that was more than coincidental, because who recognizes you in New York City?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, and then after that, we'd wake up at like 4 a.m, and then we'd go to these like missionaries of charity. That's what sticks out in my mind. And Michelle was there for a lot of that, and just the joy she had in encountering that basic work, encountering those people. And it was a lot of like shelters in bad neighborhoods. I do recall, and I guess this is probably something I should almost like to ask the family. One of the things towards the end of her life, or even during her life, one of her phrases was, "I thirst." Because
it's very much a Mother Teresa thing.
Well, and that's exactly, so my question almost to the family is, I don't know if they'd know, I guess they weren't at that, but I'm like, spending so much time with the missionaries of charity, at every chapel they have on their wall, "I thirst." And just, I like to think that had some impact on her life, to be able to plant that seed maybe in her, to say this phrase, this reality of these missionaries of charity are, Christ thirsts for winning souls for Christ. The missionaries of charity do. Well, now this blessed woman, Michelle, she does as well.
Right.
And so that was always just one thing, maybe one little thing. And I don't mean to speculate here into the unknown, but that's always something that stuck out in my mind, especially as I hear this phrase. And later on, then she, as the director of evangelization for Bismarck, probably should have looked up what that thing actually was, but she organized, I forget which year, probably around 2013 or something, she called it a big diocesan conference called the Thirst Conference.
Wow.
And she got like all these big names, and I don't know, thousands of people at this event.
Wow.
So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that definitely impacted her somehow.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So you also mentioned that we didn't get a chance to talk about, she obviously had a big impact on you, but she had a big impact on others too. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So obviously, the way of discipleship is an individual encounter. And that's where, like, at SDS, or in the Focus program, it's like she, as a missionary, has 2 disciples, 2 other women. But then, there's, and I gave you that photo of all the student leaders at SDSU that obviously knew her too. And you think of, like, it's just a relatively small group of people. But then you multiply that by, 3 different campuses, by an entire diocese, Bismarck Diocese, and all the work she did with, building up missionary disciples there. But one of the things that I guess that sticks, that I thought was, maybe earlier you asked, like, was there a moment that you thought that she would be a saint?
Yeah.
Was actually the moment was privileged to actually attend her funeral, which I believe was December 29th, 2015, exactly 1 year after her diagnosis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she passed away on Christmas Day of 2015. Right. I just think that's kind of neat too. But her funeral was at the cathedral in Bismarck and presided over by Bishop Kagan, and that was like Christmas and Easter combined. It's a big,
for attendance, you said.
For attendance, it's a good sized cathedral, and just to see the biggest funeral I have ever probably ever will attend, And just to see, it's that moment, even the family is just kind of like, where do these people come from? I think there was 34 priests
Wow.
that attended.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you may not be the only person who was who was called to the priesthood partly through her work.
No, and I know there's other. I mean, I'm trying to think. Was trying to go through the list. I know even. I think Father Tim Cohn of our diocese. I think he had an encounter with her at USD. So that's what's exciting is because we don't really know like how many people just keep crawling out of the woodwork. I know even within that the SDSU, the student leaders, like 2 of those women, one of her disciples from Flandre, I believe, became a Carmelite sister.
Oh wow!
And so I guess I became a priest, and another one. Actually, it was one of the missionaries that led the Bronx trip.
Okay.
Actually joined them, the Sisters of Life.
Oh wow!
So,
because they experienced that.
Yeah, and I
with
think
them.
because she encountered them. It's the beauty of their order. So and ultimately then as the years progress, it's just like even myself, I hear more and more like I might drop her name like, oh, Michelle was. They're like, oh, I've heard of her. I was at the campus that she was at, and and so I'm just constantly blown away. It's like I have no idea how many people, and it's and now that I guess word's getting out about her, it's kind of her cause is now official. It's like I'm excited to see like how many more people are going to know about her.
Right.
And that really is something maybe. I don't know if eventually we can talk about the cause for canonization, but. Yes. Maybe we'll jump into that.
We sure
freestyle,
can.
And then I'll kind of circle back around to the people knowing about her.
Yeah. I had to look into to make sure I had it right. So she's in the diocesan phase, which means they investigate her life and deeds, compile private or public writings, and collect testimony from witnesses of her life. And then the diocese presents that to the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. And then they decide to accept the cause or not accept the cause.
Yes.
And then if they accept it, she becomes what's called a servant of God.
Correct.
Which is not a venerable yet, because that's now the Congregation for the Cause of Saints then looks into it, right?
Yes.
And then they decide if it's they will be declared to have a life of heroic virtue.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
And then I know that process if Rome accepts it.
Right.
Hope they do.
Yep.
If anyone from Rome is listening.
Oh, I'm sure. All the time.
I'm sure, yeah. But, yep, so it's servant of God. And then I know that what takes time is 2 miracles.
Yeah.
And
because once you're declared venerable, then it's a waiting game.
Yeah.
For the
I think there's got to be some like, okay, the diocese presents all this information on her life, and they're going to look at it and actually then confirm, okay, yes, she had this heroic virtue in her life. Okay, that's good, but now we need that confirmation of, I guess, because you can prove you're in heaven if you intercede, pray through her for miracles.
And the way I understand it, and I don't know if you'll know this or not, but I think that while you're waiting for miracles, while they're venerable, usually it's like, I don't know how to put this, acceptable for the people of the diocese that brought the cause to pray for the miracles. Is that right? Do you know?
You know what? I got to be honest. I don't know.
And I'm not sure if that's right or not. But you know what? If you want to know more about that, I would just Google that, go to the usccb.org website. But I think there's something with that. Yeah. I don't know if it's, I think you can ask for her intercession, though, even if you're not in the diocese. I'm not exactly sure how that works. And I guess
just maybe I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but
well, I probably just did.
But I guess even I have to admit, even for myself, even before this was like, I would pray to her privately within my own heart, and I know there's many other people that have as well. So I guess I don't know like when is it officially to publicly say okay as a parish we're going to pray through her intercession. But one of the things I guess I wanted to kind of bring this back around is so there's obviously canonization is not a popularity contest, but it does require popular devotion. That if she's going to miracles require intercession, and intercession helps if you have a large number of people.
Yep.
And that's why I think sometimes the church, even waits, 5 years after a death to say, okay, is this person just going to kind of disappear into the time of history of time, or are they going to? Is their kind of memory going to endure? And so this is why I think it is acceptable. This is why I'm so desirous to do this interview, is so people can know about her, that more people can know. I want as many people to know about her as they possibly can.
Yep.
And then whether it might not be something public or official, but if you have a need in your heart for something, if you have a loved one who's suffering from cancer, pray to her, pray through her, rather that she may go.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Actually, as you said that, I think what it is that I have read is that only the diocese that it came from can make it like an official devotion or something like that. But yes, individually you can ask for her intercession. But one thing you have to remember when they're working through the cause of sainthood, if you want it to count, I put that in quotes. Don't ask for the intercession of 10 saints at the same time, because it has to be her, like individually. Seriously, because I have a group of saints that I go to often, so I'm not only praying. But if it's a canonization thing, it has to be just her. So yeah.
I mean, that would be kind of in a selfish way. It's like, you got Padre Pio over here. You might pray to him. He can make all sorts of miracles happen. It's like, come on, Padre, just throw Michelle a couple.
Yeah, really. You know what? You can ask for his help in that. Why not? Why not? So now, if people want to know more about her, there is something coming up.
Yes.
Away. So can you tell us about that?
Okay. So I do know that Focus, based out of Denver and led by Curtis Martin, they have actually, for some time now, I've been working on, it's completed now. They have probably about an hour-length documentary that they have put together on her life. And I guess both Father Scott Traynor and I were both privileged enough to be a part of that and be interviewed. And it was interviewed probably, I was still at the cathedral. I think it was.
Oh yeah, so
it was well over a year ago. And I've been waiting. I'm so excited for it to come out. I've had the privilege of watching it, and it's quite excellent. I must admit, it does a much better job at laying out her life than I've done in this time. I'm sorry, I can humbly say that, but so
that comes out when?
That comes out. They're going to do their national conference in St. Louis.
Okay.
I believe the first part of January of 2023.
Okay.
So that's where they kind of want to premiere it to a large audience. They usually get like 18,000 students. So it makes sense why.
Yeah.
But, and then what they do with it, then eventually they would make it public.
Yeah.
I don't know, on YouTube or Focus website. I don't know. But so if and when that time comes, obviously I could put in a plug for in the conference itself. It's not open to just college students, but now actually they kind of have a parish mission track where if you're in a parish and you want to learn about how to evangelize and be lifelong missionary disciples.
That's right.
That's one of the ways that they do that. But so you could actually have the possibility of being there to see this documentary right at
the first time.
The first time. But after that, if you're not going to make it to St. Louis, it will be available.
Yeah.
But that's
maybe
something.
you'll have to let us know when that pops up in case we aren't paying attention, and we can maybe put a link to it somewhere.
Sounds good.
Especially, we'll put a link to it once it comes about with this show in the YouTube comment. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah. So anything else, Father Eckrich, that you can think of that we didn't catch?
I think
we could probably talk for forever.
We probably could. I'm not sure if you want to listen to me forever.
Nah, no, I'm kidding, of course. Well, thank you again for coming in to talk about her. Glad we finally had the opportunity to do it.
Thank you. This has really been a privilege for me in a small way to be a part of her life and have her be a part of mine. And I'm happy to share that with you and with the people of this diocese.
And I'm really glad that she affected you the way she did, because you're, as far as I can tell, pretty good priest.
I tried.
The people in Watertown really liked you. I know that.
Yeah. I think the people everywhere. And
okay, good.
There's
I haven't had a chance to talk to other people, but I know the people in Watertown really liked you, so that's good. All right. Thank you so much for coming in,
Oh,
Father
you're very
Eckrich. I
welcome.
so appreciate it, and I'm glad you got to talk about her.
Thank you.
All right. You can always find us at sfcatholic.org for more information about our diocese. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic News.